Yeah, I think that's as a writer. I think the nitty gritty thing for me is the relationships between people and the struggles. Kind of that yin and yang that lives inside of us.
Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we are passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. And we'll give a few recommendations to you, our listeners. Beware, possible spoilers ahead. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast during the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. And as all good stories do, the world got even crazier. But, as Neil Gaiman says, fairy tales are more than true not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. Since I believe that stories have the power to show us the way and give us courage to keep going, I wanted to see if that was true for my guests as well. You're listening to episode number 13. Today I'm interviewing Beth Orozco, and she and I met through the Cochise Writer Celebration, or we met through the Cochise open mic night that the Writer Celebration hosts. Did I say that right, Beth?
Yeah, well, it's the Cochise Creative Writing Celebration, and then the open mic was sponsored through that, and then through something else that I run, which is called I Love My Border Town.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I have not joined that. I'll have to join that, I guess, since I live a mile from the border. Great. Yeah. So how long has the Writers' Celebration been going?
Oh my gosh. I think this is the 23rd year.
23.
Yeah. 20. Yes. Yeah. It was started by two women, Leslie Clark and Diane Friend. Leslie was with Cochise College. Diane was with the University of Arizona South. And they started this, just eons ago. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I took it over. Oh my gosh. I think this would be my 8th or 9th year.
Wow. And do you have anybody else that helps you with that?
Yeah, we have a committee of folks. Jay Trieber, who teaches at Cochise College. Alex O'Mara also teaches at Cochise. We have a gal, Susan Abben, she works at the public library for Sierra Vista. And there's other folks that kind of come and go and give their, when we need help with, say, things with marketing or promotion. So people are usually maybe on the committee for a year or two and then they're gone. But that's kind of the core committee right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Well, I remember the first time I went, it was like, wow, we have all these writers coming from all over the country to little Sierra Vista, Arizona. And I just was so impressed with that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we've been very fortunate to get some just amazing talent that join us for the celebration every year. It's been great.
Yeah, I loved it the last time I went, which I think it was, you might have had to cancel the one after it because of the virus. But
yeah, we had to cancel last year. And then, of course, we're not doing it, unfortunately, again this year.
So I was going to say, so tell about the open mic, which is it's connected to that in some way.
Right. So the open mic nights, we started about I think it was 3 years ago in October. And we were doing it at Broxton's in Sierra Vista. And then last year, we also started having them out here in Portal at Sky Island Restaurant and Grocery. Anyways, we started that just to kind of keep the writing community of Sierra Vista and Bisbee in the county alive. And we had a great turnout because the Cochise Writing Celebration is just once a year. It's in March. And I think year to year, people just kind of felt, that they really didn't belong to something. So the open mic has allowed for people to come together and share their stories and keep that writing community alive. And it was really successful, of course, until COVID. And so first thing that got canceled last March, of course, was the writing celebration itself. And then the open mics got canceled. And that was really hard because everything kind of dried up. And so we didn't do anything, I think March and April. And then in May, everybody was on Zoom. And I remember being at a Zoom meeting for Cochise College. And I thought, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing this for open mic? So I got a hold of one of the writers that was supposed to be at the writing celebration last year and asked her if she'd be involved. And she said yes. And then we have kind of an open mic along with what we're calling an author series. And so the authors do a reading and there's a formal interview that goes along with that. Then we have the open mic and then we're doing the writers offer workshop afterwards. And it's the response from the authors that have joined us has been fantastic because as you know, as a writer right now, it's so hard to get your work into the hands of readers. And so any platform they can participate in is a good thing. So it's been wonderful for everybody.
Yes. Well, and I was also impressed all the times we went to the open mic with the amount of people in this area who are writers.
Yes, I've always been. I'm amazed at how much talent, local talent there is. I'm asked often, like, where do you find writers? And I'm like, well, even though we have people that come from all over the country, we also have just amazing local talent.
Yeah, we do.
So yeah, that's always surprising. And every time I think I've run out of people to talk to or interview or, have join us for either open mic or as an author for the Cochise Writing Celebration, I'm always just amazed at, somebody say, well, have you talked to so-and-so or have you heard about this person or that author? And lo and behold, so often they're local and they're doing amazing things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I know that you wrote a novel because you sent it to me and I read it and it's in the manuscript stage right now, I know, but I thought it was a really great story. And I always love reading books that happen sort of where I live. So do you want to talk about your novel?
Okay, so that's the novel Tequila Highway.
Right.
Yeah, the idea for that really came out of a workshop that I was involved in out in Utah. And we were talking about land conservation and also, I was the only one that wasn't from Utah. So I came in kind of with this, I guess, information on the border as somebody that's lived here for half my life. And then they came at it more from a ranching community. And we spent several days together on a writing workshop. And I left there just thinking, there's a story in this. There's a story, I want it to take place on the border. And then I've worked on ranches over the years, on several different ranches too. But I got so much more information being with that group of writers. So I wanted to kind of depict a story of what really goes on down here on the border. But I also wanted to answer what's happening in the West, and mainly because of climate change, is that unfortunately, this place is just drying up. We see the fires in California and we see the fires, even here in Arizona and, along the border. But, and we live on a ranch. My husband and I live on a ranch that really is no longer viable because we don't have cattle here, but in the past, folks that own this before and people that are in this valley have overgrazed, and now people are just selling their cattle and getting out of it altogether. But the fact is, you still have, a home, a family, and a history. And what do you do with a ranch when it no longer can produce for you? And so that's the question I use going into the novel.
Yeah.
And then of course, that's not a very interesting question that keeps readers, I guess it's not a page turner. So then I had to create kind of a story around that. And that story was about a drug deal that went bad back in the 70s and has again come to light, and with new information and a book that was written. And so it's kind of a book inside a book.
Yeah. Well, and I liked the character. Oh, and now I'm blanking on her name. The main character.
Sophia.
Oh, yes, Sophia, right. How she had moved away, but when she came back, she realized her connection to the land. And so I liked that she was trying to do that whole balancing act of how to keep the ranch, but not maybe run cattle on it so that they used up all the water. I mean, it was her personal journey about how she remembered when Clay disappeared and how that affected the community and how it affected her and her family personally. I just liked that whole part of it, that you made it all those issues personal.
Yeah, I think that's, as a writer, I think the nitty gritty thing for me is the relationships between people and the struggles, kind of that yin and yang that lives inside of us, that we are always pulled in, one, two, or several directions, and trying to find that balance in us is always a struggle. And so I'm drawn to that. And then I'm deeply drawn to writing in settings. Nature is really an important part of my life. So how that plays in is really important to me.
Yes. Well, it was obvious about that, because I loved that you painted the picture of the landscape. That was great.
Oh, thank you.
So I hope you get to publish it.
Well, that's a journey. So when I back in 2011, I was accepted into an MFA program at SNHU, Southern New Hampshire University. And it was an amazing experience. And I published some work while I was there in that university's literary magazine. And there were a couple of us that were doing really well. I finished my first novel while I was in that program. And then as soon as I graduated, I sent my book out, and I got an agent immediately. And then my book went out everywhere. It went to Random House and St. Martin's Press and just all the big publishing houses. And I thought, what are people complaining about? This is just the easiest process. And then the book didn't sell. The first book didn't sell. And it was really disheartening. And so as I was going through that process, I started Tequila Highway. And that was something that was recommended to me, like, don't ever stop writing, just because you're working on, have an agent and things are moving forward with one novel. You've just got to keep going. Plus it's my personality. I write every day. So I just started on this next project. Well, then she took Tequila Highway and passed on it. And I am now passing on her. And it's nothing personal. She's become an agent for write more thriller and now going more into the horror genre. And I don't write like that. So this book is looking for a new home and a new agent along with the first book. So I'm in that process right now.
Oh, well, man, I hope you find somebody. It seems to me such a relevant topic, the book.
Well, yeah. I love my babies.
Yeah, really. I totally understand that. I don't have an English degree. So, I was like somebody fumbling around in the dark when I was writing my first novel. And fortunately, Ross Lampert, who you and I were talking about before we started recording, we think he's the one who introduced us to each other.
I think so, yeah.
When he and Cappy had their writers group, I was a part of that for a while. And I did learn some really valuable things from them. And that helped me. And then Deborah Strait read my first novel. She and Cappy helped me kind of fill in the blanks and clean it up a bit. I still think that it could be polished, but I'm not going to go back and polish it now. I'm just going to move on to the next one. And I write every day too, but I write my blog or I write in my journal or, I'm not writing my novel every day. And so I admire people who have had that English background because mine is all in theater. Plays are a very different format from novels. How did you get hooked on stories in the first place?
You had sent a few questions, and I've been kind of thinking about that one. And I remember, I still have it. It was in 1976, so I was like 11 years old. And I had been writing little stories, and I love to read. But I will say I have dyslexia, so writing has always been, and it doesn't come easy to me. It's been a struggle my whole life, and certainly back then in elementary school. So I was writing stories and reading and doing things, but kind of on the fringe, because academically I wasn't doing that well because of dyslexia. So anyways, I was out hiking one day with my dog Buttons, and we were on the way to the Fox River, where I go almost every day to take a fishing pole and a lunch, and Buttons and I had take off. And anyways, I found out in a farmer's field, I found an Indian arrowhead, and I picked it up and I stopped and I looked around, and all of this just crazy story of this brother and sister who were Native Americans were living in those woods. And I don't know, I just created this whole world within a minute. And from that moment on, I've never stopped writing. I mean, I wrote a story about finding that arrowhead, and then that experience just kind of unlocked some kind of thing in my imagination. And I've just been going ever since.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a great story. I love it.
Yeah.
It was like you looked out and saw the village and I
saw it all. Yeah. Just holding that little arrowhead. And honestly, I think that experience also helped me get over, not get over dyslexia, but accept the challenge I would have in front of me forever and just move forward.
Yes. Yeah. My dad had dyslexia, and he was going to school in the 30s and 40s. And he quit school because they said, you're lazy, you'll never amount to anything. And of course, I don't think dyslexia was even diagnosed then. But he taught himself how to read. So
yeah, I went to school. That was back in the late 70s, and there was no, it was just dubbed that I had a reading problem.
Yeah.
And a math problem. I have terrible. I mean, my problems with numbers are a lot worse than even with letters. So I transpose things look upside down to me. And I think I'm better at reading now only because I do it every day. But I don't know what other people see on the page. I only know what I see. And it's still something I work through.
Yeah. Well, one time I asked him about this because it was for an assignment when I was getting my master's of education. And he said, I look at the letters and they are all jumbled up on the page. And then I just have to keep looking at the page until they kind of settle down into words. I
think that's I don't know if the letters are jumbled as much as my thoughts are when I look at words. I have zero phonetic awareness. So if I come across a word, for example, I don't know, that's where the scramble comes in. I can't, it's one of the reasons I couldn't get into something like Greek mythology. It's why I struggled with, and still do terribly with Shakespeare. Because if I see something that I haven't seen before or I haven't taught myself before, I can't figure it out on my own.
Oh man, so it's a good thing that we have some help for people like that now. But wow, how did people get along before that?
Exactly. I don't know. They dropped out of school.
Yeah. Well, my dad did drop out of school, but I admire him for sticking with it and teaching himself how to read. Must be really horrible for people who don't have help like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, do you have any favorite stories that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think, well, I have a few favorite authors, and I just finished, last night I just finished a book by a woman named Louise Penny, and it was called Still Life. And it's a novel. It's her first novel in it's a Inspector Ganache. He's a kind of a whodunit mystery series, and this is the first one in her series. Anyways, I found her it was a recommendation through Kindle because I was reading a Tara French book, and Tara French books take place in Ireland, which I've been to and I love. Then this author was recommended to me, but kind of in the same genre. However, her books take place in Quebec, which is where my family is originally from. And I don't know anything about Quebec. So it was great because the whole relationship and I guess struggle and history between the English and French comes out in this book. A lot of detail about the small towns in Quebec and how government works. And so it was a great series. So that's something new that if you want to learn about Quebec and that part of Canada, her name's Louise Penny. Tara French I love because those books take place in Ireland. I think my favorite, I have two favorite authors, and that's Pat Conroy and Barbara Kingsolver. And I think mainly because of their use of just lyrical language. I mean, I just get lost and beautiful storytellers. I just get lost in the stories. It's like fine art to me, the languages within the stories.
Well, I listened to Anne Bogle's podcast, What Should I Read Next? And Louise Penny happens to be one of her favorite authors. So she recommends, so she recommends those books a lot. And I have some of them on my wish list now because I've never read any of them. And
I had not I hate to say this, but I had never even heard of her. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And then I just find out she's this mega star in Canada.
Yeah.
They're easy reads, but they're smart reads as well.
Yes.
And she's got again, I'm attracted to setting and language and relationships and all of those come together in her books.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Well, the ones that I'm hooked on, and I don't always read all of long series, but this woman named Octavia Randolph wrote a whole series called The Circle of Cerridwen, and it takes place in England in the 800s.
Oh, my.
And it's the second wave, I think, of the Vikings coming to England. And they call themselves Danes, but we call them Vikings. And I just got hooked on that and how England was not a unified island then. It was the Danes had the northern part of England and the Anglo-Saxons had the southern part, and it was called Wessex. And there was another, Mercia, I think, was another kingdom in England. And so it's all these, political and battles, but the women are the center of the stories. So all the books. And I always thought of the Middle Ages as dark and wet and cold cold and people hunkered down in their huts. And that's not the picture she paints at all. Vibrant trade. And she explains about how the farming happens and the women manage the estates, and, they grow their own flax so that they can make linen and weave it, and they have sheep so they can weave the wool and make the clothes for everybody on the estate. I mean, it's just all these things, about how the women managed all the foodstuffs and how the men took care of the horses and if they had cattle, although they didn't really have a lot of cattle there, they mostly did sheep for eating. And wool. But it was just this really interesting how they conducted their battles and their armor. And I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. And they even did all this shipping and, I was amazed at the books. So I'm hoping to have her on the podcast. I did ask her and she said, oh yeah, she'd like to do that. But she's very busy now because she's writing I think it's the 8th book in the series.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, 8th or 9th book. The newest one just came out at the end of this year, sometime in the fall. So, but I just love all the characters and their relationships. And yeah, so it's like you said, it's the relationships, it's learning about the history, it's learning about the island and the trade. And, I learned something else too. They used to take a gold coin or a copper coin or a silver coin. They would cut it up into 4 pieces. And that's where we get the term a quarter,
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. So it's just fascinating. And the things that they trade, that's the other thing. And I have to say, I'm always embarrassed when I say this. I had never heard of the island of Gotland before I read her series. It's a part of Sweden, but it's an island in the Baltic. And a couple of the characters end up living there.
Oh my. I'm going to admit I've never heard of it either.
I know. It's horrible to say that. And Octavia Randolph loved it so much that she immigrated there. I think it was in 2018 she immigrated there.
Oh, wow.
From the United States. Yeah. So she's always showing pictures and sharing their festivals and their food. And that's the other thing, the food that she talks about in the books is it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. I think she finally put together a cookbook with recipes from that she talks about in the books.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
a lot of research.
Yes. And I have to admit, I am not very good at research. So I'm going to have to learn how to be better at research. Although I did do quite a bit of research for my timeline in the past in my novels. So I'm an Oregon Trail descendant.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Both sides of my family went on the Oregon Trail out west. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my grandmother's father died in a logging accident when she was 9 years old. So, yeah, I have a long kind of 4 or 5 generations in the Northwest.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that was partly why I wanted to write my book. But yeah. So anyway, I'm off on a tangent here. But I really I'm enjoying talking to you so much. And I'm hoping that you'll continue writing and I get to read your books because I just really liked that one.
Thank you for reading that book. I think I had told you I had put that out on my blog. And when COVID first hit, and I thought, well, I'm not going to sell this now. And I put it out. And I think I did a chapter or 2 a week, something like that. Anyways, oh my gosh, I have met so many people doing that, people that started following the book and telling friends and whatever. But I'm still getting just lovely emails and I think in a time like this, we all write in a vacuum, right? It's not a ski trip in Vail, we're all doing it by ourselves. So being able to connect with an audience, it doesn't have to be what I'm learning is it doesn't have to be, I don't have to put 10,000 copies out or whatever it is. And that I can build my own community readers and writers, and those people are getting to meet one another through this process. So it's just been amazing.
That is the cool thing, because I did not go I published my book myself. Barry and I did it ourselves independently, because when it came out, I was, I'm 67 now. So I was 64, I think. And I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to, wait years and years to get it published. And it doesn't have a large following, but I think that's sort of what happened with Octavia. She just kept publishing her books. And now she has this large community on Facebook of people who've read her books and who communicate with each other. So it's a community like you're building for your writing.
I'm part of the community. Somebody isn't building it for me. And so I'm part of the energy and part of the community. It's just been a really great experience, and I'm happy I did it. I'm happy that I took the plunge, and I have other friends now that they've published with independent houses, and there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere to sell the books, unless the publishing house really. They're just getting lost in the fray because of COVID. Because they're you can't go to a book fair. You can't go to, you can't do, an author series somewhere. You can't visit bookstores. I mean, you can't get yourself out there. And so how does the message get sent? So, yeah, this was a good experience for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just started doing little videos on Instagram, videos talking about the movies that we watch in Dramatic Structure, or my podcast, things that I'm talking about on my podcast. And I don't know why I decided to start doing that, but I mean, it's one way to start building a community to me. My blog is another way. And so we just have to do it as we can.
Right, definitely.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
Oh, you know what? I do. So you had sent, like I said, a list of questions, and you had asked, what's your favorite story format? Books, definitely. But I have to say right now, we're finishing the last season of Downton Abbey. And I know I'm late on this. I know I should have done this 10 years ago. I get that. But if people have not watched that series and you like story with just amazing writing, amazing cinematography, relationships that are just razor sharp, it's just a great series. I'm putting in a plug today for Downton Abbey.
Yeah, I love it too. We loved it so much that we bought the whole series.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And
it's on Prime right now. So
yeah. And Julian Fellows, I just love him. He's written so many great things. He's fantastic on characters. And I love that he uses stories from his own family, like the whole incident with Pamuk dying in Mary's bed. That was actually something that they discovered in one of his aunts or a cousin's diary. Some cousin that had lived, a couple of generations or a generation before him, that she had written about it in her diary, and they discovered it after she died. And so,
oh my gosh.
So that's why he put that into Downton Abbey, because it was something that had actually happened
in his family. Oh, that's so funny.
Yes, really. Well, good. I'm glad you're enjoying that, because I just think that he's fantastic. His writing is fantastic.
Just amazing.
Yeah. We first discovered him when we saw the movie Gosford Park. He wrote Gosford Park. And then he's written adaptations of novels and things that I have really enjoyed. Like on Amazon Prime, I don't know if it's still there, Dr. Thorne. He took the novel and adapted it for Amazon Prime, and it's a really neat story. I'm so glad that you enjoyed that, because we loved it.
Yeah, it's been great. Just great. Yeah.
Well, I have enjoyed this so much.
Oh, so have I, Lucinda. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yes, it has been fun. And I'm hoping that someday soon the Cochise College Writers Celebration, I always get that wrong. How do you say it?
It's Cochise Creative. It's too many words. That's why you get it wrong. It's Cochise Creative Writing Celebration.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm hoping that you get to actually have authors come and have workshops again, because that's
We
fun.
should be up and running, hopefully, for 2021.
I hope
Definitely.
so. Yeah, I hope so. Good. Well, you take care, and thank you so much.
Well, you too. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles, at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.